Good evening, and thank you for trusting us to curate your nightmares. Tonight's tales will coil into shadows even courage avoids. Listen closely. What flutters at the edge of your hearing? Beware. The mind's darkest corners breed monsters no eyes could fathom. Story 1. 3 years ago, I was looking at the local job classifieds online when one of the ads caught my eye, not because of what it said, but because it said so little. Best I remember, the ad just read job available, good pay, no benefits, discretion required. It then listed an email address, and that was all. At the time, I was managing a music store, but I had already started hearing rumors we would be shutting down within the next year, and the likelihood of a transfer to another store was slim. I had been morosely looking at job listings for the last few days, but this was the first one that stood out, if only because I was bored, and it was weird so. I sent an email half an hour later. I had a response telling me to go to a particular office building in an upscale part of the city at a precise time for my screening. I went, and after waiting for a few minutes in the lobby, I was taken into an office where I was given a series of forms and questionnaires to fill out. They collected them and told me they would be in touch. I had almost forgotten about the whole thing until a month later, I got a call saying I had moved on to the second stage of the hiring process. I was again given an address and time, and when I arrived, I was met by a man who introduced himself as Mr. Solomon. He escorted me into a large room that contained a chair and a desk. On the desk were 2 large monitors, a keyboard and mouse, and a bolted-down metal box with 2 oversized buttons on it. One red and one green. He told me this room was a model for the place I would be working if I took the job. He described the job as follows. I would be working 7 shifts of 6 hours every week. My job would be simple. I would arrive at work 10 minutes early and enter an outer area that was like a locker room. I would have my own personal locker. I would store all belongings in the locker and change into the provided work clothes. I was never, under any circumstances, to carry any item of my own into the surveillance room. I was never, under any circumstances, to take any item with me from the surveillance room as for what I was to do in the surveillance room. I was told that the monitor on the left would constantly show a live stream from a high-definition camera in a remote location. My job was simply to watch the camera. Once an hour, I would get onto the computer attached to the right monitor and enter a brief log describing anything interesting that occurred in the last hour. I would have no pens or pencils or paper, and I should never try to take any kind of written notes about the work as for the red and green buttons. The red button was only to be used if there was an emergency. This meant something on the video or in my workspace that required outside help. The green button was to be hit if I saw something on the video feed that was particularly noteworthy. It would tell other people somewhere that, at least in my opinion, something interesting was going on. Solomon stressed that while I was given discretion on when to use this button, I should err on the side of only using it if, and when something of real significance occurred, he pointed out the camera on the ceiling of the room we were in. He said the real room would be the same. My work would be observed, and other people were watching the room on the video feed as well. He said I was only a redundancy in case other systems failed. He then smirked and asked if I knew what he meant by redundancy. I nodded, trying not to show my irritation. I don't talk that good to people, so sometimes they think I am dumb. That is okay. Let him think that if he paid me good enough, the pay was very good. $35 an hour. This worried me. I was already thinking this was some kind of psych experiment or secret government job, which I was okay with. But that kind of money to sit and watch a screen. My mom always told me that if something seems too good to be true, it probably is. And this was seeming too good to be true. I asked if I was going to be doing anything illegal. Solomon laughed and said no. I asked if anyone was going to get hurt. Again, he shook his head no. He said the reason they were paying so much was because they needed employees that were motivated to be professional and discreet. The work they were doing was important, and for various reasons it couldn't be discussed. If I took the job, I would have to sign papers promising I would never discuss my work there, or I could be sued or locked up. I am only breaking that now because of everything that happened, so I took the job, and because they wanted me to start right away. I had to quit the store with no notice. I felt bad about that, but I was excited about the new job too. It was a lot of money and seemed like easy enough work, if a bit boring. I was nervous that there was something more to it, but I told myself I would just have to see. No point in chickening out and wasting a good chance, because I let my imagination go crazy. I was given the location of the job itself, and when I went there, I was amazed that it really was just like the model room I had been shown, with only a few differences. There was a locker room you had to pass through to enter the surveillance room, and there was a small bathroom attached to the real surveillance room also. The real room had a small water cooler in the corner, but because I wasn't allowed to bring anything in with me, I had to eat before or after every shift. The biggest difference, of course, was that the monitors were turned on. The right monitor was just a black and white terminal like you see in movies sometimes. I could type in my logs, but no internet to look at or anything like that. The left monitor, it was video from a room. You would call it a bedroom, I guess, because it had a bed in it. But it had lots of other stuff too. A TV, a sofa and chairs, a couple of tables, and plenty of empty space in between. The camera must be high up in a corner, because I could see pretty much everything except for the far sides of furniture. At first, though, I didn't notice any of that stuff. All I saw was her. She looked to be a little older than me and was very pretty. When I first saw her, she was laying on her side on the sofa. That was the part of the room farthest from the camera, but the picture was very clear, and I could tell that she was sleeping. I found myself leaning into the monitor more so I could see her better. And then I thought about what I was doing and felt embarrassed. It's like I was spying on her, a peeping Tom. My mom used to call it didn't he want to be a peeping Tom? But I didn't want to be silly either. I needed to think about it slow. It was a good job, and I wasn't doing anything wrong, right? I wasn't hurting anybody. The woman looked fine, and the room was nice. She probably agreed to be there. And it's all some experiment or something. I was just overreacting, so I sat down in the chair and began my work beep. It didn't take long before I understood more. The woman I took to calling her Rachel wasn't there of her free will. I never saw her hurt, but it was clear that she never left that room except to go into what I think is a bathroom area that my camera couldn't see. Well, she never left the room on her own. Periodically, usually a couple of times a week during my shifts, men and women in strange-looking outfits would come in and take her from the room. Sometimes she would struggle, but usually she would just go along with her head hung low. They would always bring her back, though the times when she wasn't brought back during my shift were always the worst for me. I would worry about her until I got to work the next day and saw her in the room watching TV or painting. She never looked hurt or even that upset except for when they took her. And even when she fought, they were always gentle with her. Still, I knew something was wrong. I considered quitting the job or hitting the red button and getting someone to come so I could get some answers, or calling the police and showing them what the camera was showing me. Except I was scared of losing my job, and scared of what these people might do to me if I quit or told on them. Solomon had told me when I took the job that part of being discreet was not asking questions. I would never be asked to do more than I had already been told. But I could never tell anyone what I did or saw. And I could never ask questions about what I was doing or why so. I made excuses. It was all an experiment. She was crazy or sick, and they were trying to help her. She was doing a job just like I was, or if she really was a prisoner somewhere. At least I was watching to make sure that she was okay if they ever tried to hurt her. Or I saw that she really didn't want to be there for sure. I could get help then. In a way, I told myself I was helping to protect her by watching I, Don T, expect you to think much of my excuses. I, Don T, think much of them myself, especially now. But in my defense, when things changed, I didn't ignore it or try to explain it away. I knew something had to be done. Beep, Rachel would usually paint for an hour or two every day, and it seemed to always be during my afternoon shifts. The room had no windows as far as I could tell, but I guess she either used a clock or her own body's time to keep to a kind of schedule. I always liked to watch her paint. The thing she was painting was always facing the wrong way for me to see it, but I could see her face as she worked. She always looked peaceful and happy when she was painting, and seeing her that way, smiling serenely from time to time as she got something the way she wanted it, always made my day. I first noticed something was wrong when she started painting more frequently a few weeks ago. Her expression was more focused and serious, and there was a tension to her movements that I wasn't used to seeing. At first, I thought she was just really trying to work beep something, and I wanted to tell her not to worry. Every few weeks the others would come in and take the old paintings out anyway, bringing in a new stack of think the word is canvas, but it was more than her being focused. Something was wrong. She didn't look happy, and she was going for hours at a time. In the span of 3 days, she had finished 4 paintings. I had been growing more and more worried watching her work. And when she finished the 4th, I found myself telling her to just stop and rest a while. I had grown accustomed to talking to the monitor, talking to B for Beep in my own way, but she didn't stop. Instead, she began moving the paintings, arranging them on the back and seat of the long sofa at the far end of the room. This was the first time I had gotten to see any of the paintings, even when the others were taking them out. They always seemed to be turned away from the camera. I was still worried about her, but I was also happy to finally see something she had worked on. Happy and amazed they were beautiful. One was a beautiful green forest. Another was an old stone well. A third was a house, sitting alone on a small island. The last was an old-fashioned looking movie theater. All of them looked like something out of a dream, with trailing lines of color mixing in the air around them, like leaves caught in a wind. It was only when I looked close that I realized the lines of color weren't random. They were words, easy to miss if you weren't looking close. And by themselves, they didn't seem to mean much. Just the ghost of a word somewhere in each of the paintings. Easy to lose in everything else that was being shown. I leaned into the monitor and squinted, trying to read the words. Then my heart started thudding as I made them out, blinking and rubbing my eyes. I looked again, reading them out loud in order left to right, top pair then bottom. Please, help me, Thomas. I pushed back from the monitor, my hand over my mouth. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how any of this could be happening. It wasn't just that she was asking for help, though that was a big part of it. It was that Beep my Bep name is Thomas. Beep Part 2. Story 2. This is Call. Jacob Wayne of the United States Air Force. If you rereading this right now, it is very important that you keep reading until the end. It should take 3 to 5 minutes. And it is extremely important that you read carefully and follow the instructions provided. Humor me if you must. But please don't look away until you've finished reading. Oh, and please try to stay calm. Any increase in your stress levels will draw their attention ergo. I want to go into detail as to how you got where you are. How you got here isn't as important as getting you out. Believe me when I say we are working on that right now. The best way to help yourself is to keep reading. Don't scan ahead. Don't read out loud. Just read right now. You are probably thinking back on the past few days, and nothing felt out of the ordinary. You went about your regular daily activities with nothing unusual to report. That's because they are very good. So good most people don't even realize they in the simulation, even as our code works its way deeper into their program. They are monitoring you. So please, remain calm. It was tricky, but we found a way in to communicate directly with you. We had to embed this message into your daily routine, so it didn't draw their attention. You probably reading this on Reddit, Facebook, or some other social media site. Might even be in an email forward or a book. We don't know. We can't control how the message gets to you. We only know that you are receiving it subliminally as your eyes are passing over these words. A code is being uploaded into your brain. Think of it as a computer virus, or in this case, an antivirus. Your brain is an organic computer, and they exploited that. They hacked right into your subconscious mind and overrode it with their simulation code. That is how they got in. And that is why everything appears normal. You might think that you were going about your daily life, but in reality, you were strapped to a table with tubes sticking out of your body now that the code is uploading. You may begin to feel some sensations. For example, one ear might feel slightly warmer than the other. You might even feel an itch or tickle. Dawn tea scratch. Just let it be. Ignore the dull background hum you might hear as well. That is their program. If they catch on before our code has time to work, they will abort the simulation. If that happens, you will be lost to us forever. And don't be alarmed. But by now, they realize we are in their system. You may notice some small changes, specifically a slight shortness of breath, or that you have to control your breathing manually. This is normal. We know from other communication attempts that whenever they discover a code break-in, the first system they power down is the one controlling your breathing. Thankfully, even in the simulation, you are capable of breathing manually. Try it. Breathe in. Breathe out. Inhale. Exhale. Awesome you redoing just fine they. V probably figured out there as a glitch. But if our code is working, we V disabled their ability to do a hard reboot. Because of this, they will try other methods to disrupt the upload. It is very important that you ignore anything that might draw your attention from these words. If they pull you away before the upload completes, it will delete our code. Block them out. Ignore the movements you see in your peripheral vision, those sounds you hear, the voices. They aren't family, friends, or co-workers in need of attention. They may even try to use your pets. They know your weaknesses overlook the notifications popping up on your screen. If you're on a phone or computer, block them all out until you finish reading. It is just another way they try to break our communication link evidently. If our code is working, the next thing you notice is an overwhelming urge to swallow. You don't realize it, but there is a feeding tube down your throat. You'll only know it's there because your tongue rests comfortably in your mouth. You might also become hyper-aware of the amount of saliva being produced. Don't overreact. If you have to swallow, just swallow. It is only weird if you make it weird so. If you are still reading this, the code upload is about 90% complete. We V-logged onto your location. You redoing great. But you are really going to need to focus now. Once the upload is complete, there will be instructions you will need to follow to exit the simulation. That is, if you followed the instructions. And Haven T looked away complicating matters, is the fact that they now know we here, and they know what what we read doing. Their attempts to divert your attention through the simulation proved unsuccessful. So now they were going to use your body's systems against you. They are in your brain. They want you to blink. Dawn T, blink. Your life depends on keeping your eyes open. Almost there. Just a few paragraphs more until the code upload is complete. Dawn T, scan down or up. Just keep reading. I got you this far. Stay with me. Eyes open. Eyes front. Keep them locked on the screen. Please focus. I don't want to lose you. I've lost so many already. Ignore it all. Block everything out. Ignore that tickle on your scalp and the itch on your arm. That's them. Attempting a manual override. Dawn T, give up now. You've made it this far. Fight IT. You're almost there. Just follow the instructions below. And we can get you out embedded in this text. Are the steps you need to follow to unplug from the simulation. If we did this correctly, the first letter of each paragraph will tell you what you need to do. Don't look yet. The upload still needs to finish. I hope you didn't look. Upload complete. We've done everything we can on this NCU. On the other side, beep credits. Story 3. The walls smelled like old roses and damp earth. That was the first thing Clara noticed when the real estate agent handed her the keys to the house on Hemlock Crescent. The scent clung to every room, persistent as a bruise, even after she scrubbed the floors raw and left all the windows open for 3 days straight. Her mother would have called it a fixer-upper with character. Clara called it the only thing she could afford after the divorce. She found the journal on the second night, wedged behind the cast-iron radiator in what would become her bedroom. The cover felt wrong, too warm, like skin left in sunlight. Its pages crackled with brittle yellow edges, filled with cramped handwriting that started in neat cursive before dissolving into jagged spikes. March 14th. The house breathes when I sleep. March 17th. There's something in the walls that isn't mice. March 23rd. I see her face in every reflection when the lights go out. Clara told herself it was poetry, fiction, but she began checking her phone's camera roll each morning. Thumbing through photos, she didn't remember taking blurred streaks of darkness near the bedroom door. The attic ladder down when she never touched it. Her own sleeping face lit ghostly blue by the screen in her hand. The sounds started in week 2, not the usual groans of an old house settling, but wet, rhythmic knocks inside the walls, 3 rapid taps, then 2 slow ones, a code, a heartbeat. Clara pressed her ear to the plaster after midnight, breath fogging the surface, and felt the vibration travel through her jawbone. Something knocked back. "It S-pipes," said the contractor on day 3 of the renovation. Squinting at the bathroom walls, his flashlight beam caught the edges of black mold spreading like veins behind the tiles. "You got rats, too. Hear that?" Clara, didn't he tell him about the whispers? They came at 3:17 a.m. Precisely. A chorus of overlapping voices rising from the air vents. "You re not alone. You re not alone. You re not," cutting off the moment she sat upright. She started sleeping with the lights on. The shadows looked thicker where they pooled in the corners. The journal entries grew more frantic. April 1st. They re not dreams. She stands at the foot of the bed, mouth moving, but I can't hear April 3rd. The roses 1T stop growing. Roots in the pantry. Petals under my pillow. April 9th. I tried to leave. The front door 1T open from the inside anymore. Clara checked the locks. Twice. 3 times. She texted her ex-husband for the first time in months. "Did you send this? Is this some sick joke?" Before remembering, he blocked her number. That night, she dreamt of digging. Her hands bled into the backyard soil, nails splitting, until she uncovered a wedding ring tangled in hair, the exact chestnut shade of her own. "You repale," said the contractor on his final day. He hesitated by his truck, eyes darting to the second-floor windows. "Look, my grandma used to say places can hunger. Maybe get some sage. Or a priest." She laughed too loudly. The sound died in her throat when she returned inside and found every mirror covered with bedsheets. She hadn't done that. The Journal S last entry, April 12th. I understand now. The house doesn't want owners. It wants replacements. She has been here all along, wearing my skin. And when the roses bloom again, the page ended in a rust-brown smear. Clara S. hands shook as she placed the journal in the fireplace. The flames turned unnaturally green, hissing like wet logs. And when the smoke cleared, the book sat untouched. That S, when she noticed the smell intensifying, not decay, but the cloying sweetness of roses at full bloom. She followed it to the basement. The dirt floor pulsed. Tendrils burst from the ground as she watched, thorned and glistening, weaving through the air like blind serpents. Clara stumbled backward, ankle catching on exposed root. The vines wrapped her legs first, cold, slick, dragging her toward the blooming mass at the center of the room. She understood then, screaming into the dark, as thorns pierced her palms. The previous owners hadn't left. They'd been planted. When the police came weeks later, responding to concerned neighbors, they found the house spotless. No journal, no vines, just a faint floral scent and a single rose growing through a crack in the basement floor. Its petals, the deep red of clotting blood. The real estate agent held an open house the following Sunday. A young couple lingered in the master bedroom. The woman rubbing her arms. "Does it feel alive to you?" she asked. Her fiancé laughed. "It is perfect." Outside, unseen by anyone, the rose bush thickened. Story 4. The ice groaned. Dr. Elena Voss heard it first, a low, tectonic shudder that vibrated through the floor of Shackleton Station, S Research Wing. She paused, her pen hovering over the notebook, where she'd been transcribing symbols from the artifact. The sound wasn't coming from the Antarctic ice sheet outside. It was underneath them. "You hear that?" she asked, voice steady. Too steady. A habit from her linguistics fieldwork in war zones, where showing fear got you shot. Marcus, the Team S geologist, didn't he look up from his microscope? Pressure shifts. The shelf settles. Happens all that the groan came again. Deeper. The fluorescent lights flickered. This time, they all froze. Captain Hayes entered without knocking. His parka still dusted with snow. We found another one. They'd been excavating Site Gamma. For 3 weeks, a jagged scar in the ice 2 miles northeast of base, where a meteorite impact had exposed something older, much older. The first structure emerged on day 5. Black stone pillars arranged in a spiral, their surfaces etched with spiraling glyphs that made Elena's eyes water if she stared too long. Carbon dating suggested 250,000 years. Impossible. Homo sapiens were infants then. The new structure was worse. It waited in a freshly melted ice cavern, its edges sharp as surgical tools. Not pillars this time, but a single obsidian monolith, 12 feet tall and perfectly rectangular. The ice around it steamed faintly, though the cavern's temperature read -40°C. Dr. Lila Chen, their biologist, reached out a gloved hand. "Don T," Elena said. Too late. Lila's fingers brushed the stone and snapped back as if burned. It's warm. The glyphs began to glow. Elena dreamed in angles. She hadn't slept in 53 hours. None of them had. Not since the monolith activated. The symbols crawled behind her eyelids whenever she closed them, twisting geometries that bypassed her optic nerves and etched directly into her amygdala. She started transcribing them on the walls of her bunk, using a stolen tube of epoxy. They looked wrong in human handwriting. Too blunt, too small. It's a map, she whispered at the emergency meeting. Her hands shook. She hid them under the table. The pillars, the monolith They re-coordinates. No invitations. Marcus snorted. His left eye had developed a tic. For who? Space aliens. For something. Leela S.'s voice was hollow. She hadn't removed her gloves since the touch. The tips had fused to her skin. The samples, the black stone, isn't inert. It growing, infiltrating the ice. Captain Hayes massaged his temples. A migraine bloomed behind his eyes. They all had them now. We were shutting down the site. Noah S. sending a containment team. Alina laughed. The sound jagged. You think that matters. It has been here 250,000 years. It woke up when we arrived. We were not containing it. We were the key. The first death was an accident. Watanabe from engineering slipped on the ice near Site Gamma. His body wasn't found for 6 hours. When they brought him back, his face was serene except for his eyes. They burst like overripe grapes. Vitreous humor frozen into tiny crystal shards. Frostbite. Hayes insisted. But Alina saw the black veins under Watanabe S. jaw, the same ones creeping up Leela S. neck. That night, the auroras came, not the usual undulating greens, but a bruised purple band that throbbed in time with Alina S. headache. She stood at the observation deck window, breath fogging the glass. The light pulsed, and for a moment the ice sheet rippled, not melting, not cracking, rippling, as if the continent had become liquid beneath its frozen skin. Marcus found her there. His parka hung open, revealing a sweat-soaked thermal shirt. You need to see this. In the lab, the monolith S surface had split open, not a crack, a fissure, impossibly straight, revealing a hollow interior that smelled of ozone and burnt hair. Inside, floating in a gel-like substance, were 7 human teeth. Mine are missing, Marcus said. He bared his gums. The molars on his lower left side were gone. The gaps looked decades old. Alina checked her own mouth. All teeth accounted for. Yet, the second death wasn't an accident. Hayes put a bullet through Leela S.'s forehead when she crawled into camp. Her legs fused into a single boneless stalk. Her gloves had split open. Her fingers were translucent filaments that scratched equations into the ice. The equations bled. Terminal descent, Hayes muttered, staring at Leela S.'s twitching corpse. His nose was bleeding black. Stage 4 exposure. We were all Alina didn't stay to hear the rest. She ran to the communications room. Boots slipping on ice that shouldn't be there. The base S heaters were set to 20°C, but frost spread across every surface. The satellite phone hissed with static. When she pressed it to her ear, the static resolved into a voice. Her voice. Wrong, it is all wrong. The sky isn't empty. It full of teeth, she smashed the phone. The shards cut her palm. The blood that welled up was viscous, glittering with microcrystalline structures. Marcus tried to burn the monolith. He dragged a barrel of aviation fuel to Site Gamma, screaming about cleansing fire. Elena watched from a ridge as he doused the black stone. The fuel froze before it hit the surface, forming grotesque icicles that shattered when Marcus lit the match. The flame burned blue-green, then inverted a tendril of absolute darkness that latched onto his face. He came back at dawn. "It's beautiful," he said, though he had no mouth left to speak. The words vibrated from the new organ, pulsing in his chest. The light between stars at S, not empty. It's them, watching, feeding. We read just the mold on the bread, Elena. The mold, docent matter. She shot him with Hayes' abandoned pistol. The bullet passed through his skull and kept going, tearing a hole in reality that showed her beyond. The thing in the ice had many names, none pronounceable. It had been waiting before continents formed. It would wait after they dissolved. Humanity's rise and fall was less than a blink to its lidless eyes that were opening now. Drawn by the monolith's call, Elena understood. The glyphs wherein a map. They were a recipe. She stood at the edge of Site Gamma, where the ice had melted into a perfect black circle. The auroras churned above, a living vortex. Her notebook trembled in her hands. Pages filled with symbols that squirmed like maggots. She translated the final sequence an hour ago, using the parts of her brain that hadn't yet petrified. A voice behind her, Don Hayes. Half his body had turned to glass. His remaining eye pleaded. "They hungry," Elena said. Her tears froze instantly, carving diamond trails down her cheeks. But maybe, if we open the door ourselves, they'll make it quick. She began to read aloud. The glyphs peeled off the page, becoming sound, becoming light, becoming a bridge. The auroras reached down. The ice screamed, and somewhere in the vast, cold dark between galaxies, something turned. Rescue teams found Shackleton Station empty. No bodies, no blood, only a series of deep, precise holes drilled through the ice sheet, each exactly 7 miles deep. At the bottom of the deepest hole, a single tooth, human, molar, lower left. When handled, it dissolved into a dark fluid that bypassed containment protocols, bypassed skin, bypassed reality. The technician who touched it is currently quarantined at McMurdo Station. She claims to feel better than ever. Her eyes are beginning to crystallize. The auroras still burn purple over Antarctica. They respreading. Story 5. The stones breathed. Clara realized this on her third night at Hailstrom Point Lighthouse, though she couldn't articulate how she knew. Not at first. It wasn't the sucking rasp of air through lungs, but something slower, a tectonic sigh, that vibrated up through the 187 steps. She climbed to reach the lantern room. The entire island seemed to exhale as she pressed her palm against the cold observation window, watching storm-tossed waves claw at the black basalt cliffs 200 feet below. She'd taken the seasonal keeper position for the silence. The real world still carried the aftertaste of hospital disinfectant, and her mother's vacant stare in the hospice bed. The way the cardiac monitor had flatlined right as the morning news began cheerfully discussing traffic patterns. The job listing promised 3 months of splendid isolation on a half-acre rock, 30 miles off the Maine coast. No Wi-Fi, no deliveries after the weekly supply boat, no human contact beyond the crackling Coast Guard radio. Checks every sunset. The first strangeness came as she inventoried the pantry. Cans of beans and peaches, dated 1997, a jar of instant coffee, hardened into a single brown brick. Behind them, carved into the rotting wooden shelf, she found the words Don T. Let IT count your steps. The grooves looked recent. The exposed would still pale against the century of grime. That night, as wind screamed through the lighthouse's corroded weather vane, Clara lay awake, counting her own footsteps from bed to bathroom. 13. Always 13 by day 4. The storm settled into the island's bones. Fog clung to the tower like a second skin, muffling the crash of waves, until the world shrank to the circular rooms stacked inside the lighthouse kitchen. Bedroom, watch room, lantern. Clara's routines took on the weight of ritual. Trimming the wick on the backup kerosene lamps, polishing the great Fresnel lens despite its decommissioning decades ago. Talking, allowed to drown out the way the walls seemed to lean closer when her back was turned. You losing it, she told the stained porcelain sink as she scrubbed moss from its cracks. The sink didn't argue, neither did the face in the speckled mirror above it pale as the underbelly of a fish. Dark circles blooming under eyes that kept flicking to the doorframe. She started keeping knives in multiple rooms. It was the stones that made it real, not the lighthouse foundation stones, quarried and cut by human hands, but the island itself, that jagged fist of volcanic rock punching up from the Atlantic during her midday perimeter check, a habit she couldn't recall starting. Clara noticed the tide pools. They formed perfect circles, 12 of them spaced at precise intervals around the island S circumference. No seaweed clung to their edges. No crabs scuttled through their still waters. When she dropped a pebble into one, it sank without a ripple. The pebble was granite. The pool swallowed it like it was made of air that night. The radio static developed a voice. Clara had been methodically cleaning her one good chef S-knife when the emergency channel fizzed to life. Not the usual white noise, but something wetter. A sound like meat being peeled off bone. Beneath it, a whisper that raised the hair on her arms. 612. 613. She gripped the knife handle. Hello. Coast Guard Nantucket. This is Hailstrom Light. Do you copy? The static hiccuped. A child's laughter echoed through tinny speakers, dissolving into a wet cough. Then, clear as a bell, her own voice. 13 steps. Always 13. The channel went dead she, didn't he sleep? Couldn't he? Every creak of the lighthouse aging bones became footfalls on the spiral stairs. At 3:17 am, by her phone failing clock, Clara dragged the dresser in front of her bedroom door and sat with her back to the cold stone wall. Knife balanced across her knees. The stone's breathing grew louder, or maybe it was her own hyperventilation. She couldn't tell any more. Dawn brought a different horror clarity. In the gray morning light, Clara saw the marks. Dozens of thin scratches covered the exterior walls, concentrated around the boarded-up ground floor windows. They looked like tally marks. No, like Roman numerals. MDCXLV, MDCXLVI, numbers climbing towards some unimaginable, some the supply boat. Wasn't tea due for 5 days? Her last coherent thought before the fever hit was that she should be questioned. Why a decommissioned lighthouse needed a keeper when consciousness returned. It came in stutters. Clara on her hands and knees in the lantern room, polishing the dormant lens until her fingers bled. Clara standing ankle-deep in a tide pool, watching her reflection mouth words she couldn't hear. Clara waking at the base of the lighthouse stairs with a sprained wrist, and no memory of falling the stones sang to her now. A subharmonic drone that lived in her molars. She stopped eating, started collecting things, shards of beach glass, gull feathers, a dead starfish, arranging them in spirals on the kitchen floor. The patterns felt important, protective. Once she caught herself trying to fit a mussel shell into the gap between 2 floorboards, crooning a lullaby her mother used to sing. The shell slipped through, as if the wood were liquid on what might be been day 9 or 90. Clara found the journal, wedged behind a loose brick in the watchroom, its pages brittle and speckled with mold. The entries started cheerful enough weather reports. complaints about canned food, sketches of seabirds. Then, midway through, October 12, 1987, the previous keeper left in a hurry, found his logbook in the privy, pages torn out except the last. They in the stones. They count. They wait. Nonsense, of course, but the man's hand, Christ, looked like he'd been riding with a broken finger. October 29, the numbers 1T stop, found another tally carved into the outhouse door, MDCLXIX. That S1669. For what? November 1. I hear them in the walls. Not rats. Something smoother, like stones rubbing together. Coast Guard says evacuation delayed another week due to storms. God help me. The final entry crawled across the page in frantic, overlapping script. They let me see the pattern today. ITS, not the lighthouse they want. ITS the counting. The counting makes IT real. 187 steps, 13 steps, 6 tide, POOLS. 12 tide, POOLS. One light, one light, one light. Keeps them the rest dissolved into a spiral drawn. So violently, the pen had torn through paper. Clara's hands shook. She realized two things simultaneously. The spiral matched the one she made with beach glass, and the quality of silence had changed. No wind, no distant gulls, just a thick, woolen quiet that pressed against her eardrum. She ran for the stairs. The lighthouse door stood open, though she chained it shut that morning. Outside, the world had gone still. Fog hung in perfect veils between the tide pools, which now glowed faintly green. The stones, the real stones. The island's flesh shimmered with wetness that Wasson-T water it waited at the water's edge. Clara's mind fractured trying to comprehend it. A shifting column of darkness that Wasson-T quite smoke. Wasson-T quite liquid, but somehow conveyed age. Centuries of patient counting. Millennia of stones grinding against stones. Learning to speak through the slow erosion of epochs. The thing had no face, but she felt its attention like cold seawater filling her lungs. When it moved, it didn't walk. Numbers unspooled in its wake. MDCLXX. MDCLXXI carving themselves into the rock. What do you want? Clara meant to scream it. The words came out, a whisper. The presence. Didn't he speak? It showed her the vision struck like a migraine. The lighthouse collapsing not from storm or decay, but devoured by the island itself. Basalt teeth chewing through iron and glass. A great eye opening in the deep, its pupil shaped like the Fresnel lens, and everywhere the counting steps, heartbeats, seconds, until the next supply boat arrived to find nothing but a bare rock polished smooth. Clara stumbled back, but the lighthouse door had vanished. Where it once stood, the stones formed a perfect archway leading down, the stairs beyond wherein T-Man made. They spiraled into the earth like a fossilized nautilus shell, each step numbered in glowing numerals. At the bottom, a light pulsed not her kerosene lamps, but something older. Hungrier her legs moved without consent. The archway S threshold felt like pushing through a membrane of cold gelatin. As she descended, the numbers on the walls changed, not carved, but grown from the stone itself. CLXVI, CLXVII. Her own breath became a metronome counting each step at the 613th stair. She knew without knowing how. Clara emerged into a cavern. The walls writhed with bioluminescent tendrils that resolved into more number states. She realized 1632, 1799, 1987. Names appeared beside some. J. Whittaker, P. Harlow, E. Moss. The last entry read C. Rays, her own name glowing faintly blue in. The cavern S center stood the previous keeper, or what remained of him, Elias Cartwright, according to his name tag, had fused with the stone floor up to his thighs. His torso leaned at an unnatural angle, neck craned to stare at the ceiling, where the Fresnel lens floated, not the lighthouse S replica, but something vast and alien, its glass prisms replaced with obsidian shards that refracted impossible colors. Elias S. mouth moved soundlessly, teeth clicking like abacus beads. Clara understood now. The lighthouse wasn't a warning beacon. It was a lure, a sacred numeral in whatever equation these stone gods used to calculate their awakening. Every step she'd taken, every ritualistic polishing of the lens, every obsessive count of cans and stairs and tide pools, all of it added another digit to their some Elias S. head snapped toward her. His eyes had calcified into milky quartz, but his smile was horribly alive. Almost time, he rasped, voice like a landslide. The stones, remember. The stones, always. She didn't stay to hear the rest. Clara fled up the impossible stairs. Elias S. Laughter echoing through the cavern. The numbers on the walls blazed brighter as she passed. CLXVIII, CLXIX, CLXX, each digit a hammer strike to her sanity when she burst onto the surface. The world had tilted. The lighthouse stood intact, but wrong. Its bricks arranged in fractal patterns that hurt to perceive. Outside, the tide pools had multiplied. Hundreds now, thousands. Perfect circles eating away at the island S flesh. From each rose a thin tendril of smoke that curled toward the lighthouse lens. Clara didn't he realize she was screaming until her throat rawed? She scrambled for the radio, fingers slipping on blood-slick dials. Mayday, Mayday, this is Hailstrom Light. There S in the stones. You have to the child S, laughter again. Then the voice from the static, clearer now. 613, 614. SHHH, Clara. Almost there. She smashed the radio with Elias S. Journal. The impact left her hands sticky with mold and blood. Through the shattered porthole window, she watched the ocean. Waves moved in precise, geometric patterns, hexagons, collapsing into triangles. Over and over, the horizon line sharpened to a razor. Edge night fell without sunset. Clara huddled in the lantern room, surrounded by her pathetic spirals of beach glass. The great lens above hummed with power it shouldn't he possess. Through its warped glass, she saw stars that were T-stars, pinpricks of green light, arranging themselves into numerals. At moonrise, the stones began to crawl. It started with pebbles skittering across the floor like dropped marbles. Then the entire lighthouse groaned as the foundation stones shifted, grinding against each other with purpose. Clara pressed herself against the curved wall, feeling the vibration of ancient speech in her spine. A handprint appeared on the exterior window. Not human. 5 elongated fingers, ending in jagged stone claws. Then another. Then a dozen. They dragged downward with a nails-on chalkboard screech, etching glowing numerals into the glass. DCX, DCXI, DCXII. The light flared. Clara S. shadow burned itself onto the wall in permanent silhouette as the lens began to spin. Through its prism, she saw the truth. The island wasn't a rock. It was a joint, a knuckle in some colossal creature that had stretched itself across the ocean floor for millennia, dreaming in tectonic shifts. The lighthouse, its glass eye, the numbers, its heartbeat hand. She wound. The clock, something vast, began to rise from the sea. Clara didn't see it so much as feel the absence where reality should be a towering negation, shaped like the between seconds of a stopwatch. S-tick. The stones sang in triumph. The lighthouse door blew open, and the presence from the beach flowed up the stairs, numbers blooming in its wake like mold on time-lapse. Clara did the only thing left to her. She climbed onto the lantern room exterior catwalk. Icy wind tearing at her clothes. The thing inside reached the top of the stairs. It had taken Elias S. face, but his features kept rearranging old man, child, her mother S. sunken hospice expression, all framed by writhing stone tentacles. Join the count. It spoke through Elias S. mouth, through the stones. through the numbers in her bones, become a digit in the greater sum. Clara looked down at the waiting rocks, looked up at the lens, now burning with black light. For the first time in weeks, she laughed. "Count this," she whispered, and smashed the kerosene lantern against the lenslet explosion, tore the night open. Glass shards became a constellation of falling stars. For one frozen moment, Clara hung in the air like a misplaced decimal point. Then the island opened its mouth. They never found her body. The Coast Guard discovered the lighthouse empty, but intact. All damage mysteriously repaired. The supply boat captain noted fresh tally marks by the dock, MDCCCLXXXIX. When asked about previous keepers, he shrugged. "Hailstrom has been automated since '92. You sure you got the right rock? But late at night, when the tides suck hungrily at the stone teeth of the Maine coast, operators sometimes pick up a faint transmission on abandoned channels, a woman's voice, ragged but triumphant, whispering numbers backwards, and beneath it, if you listen close enough, the sound of stones applauding." Story 6. The ice had teeth. Dr. Eleanor Marlowe felt them gnawing at her parka as she trudged across the Antarctic plateau, her breath crystallizing in the floodlight S-beam. The dig site yawned before them, a jagged maw in the glacier S-belly, where the core sample drill had struck something that shouldn't exist. Satellite images showed only flat white. Their thermal scans told a different story. A geometric shadow 3 kilometers wide, buried for millennia, now rising like a splinter, murmured Dr. Raj Patel, their microbiologist, peering into the abyss. His breath fogged the air, the ice rejecting it. The structure revealed itself in increments over days. Not a meteorite, not any mineral on Earth. Its obsidian surfaces drank the light. Its angles subtly wrong, a hexagon here, a dodecahedron there. Geometries that prickled the eyes when Alina ran her glove along one edge. The ice beneath her boots groaned like a living thing. "It's warmer down here," said Dr. Iris Voss, their astrophysicist. She crouched, removing a mitten to press bare fingers against the floor. 37 degrees Celsius. Exactly. Human body temperature. They found the chamber on the 7th day. The walls pulsed with bioluminescent veins, casting greenish light over something suspended at the center, a sphere the size of a grapefruit. Its surface shifting like oil on water. Micah Hayes, their tech specialist, vomited into his rebreather when he saw it. "It's not still," he gasped. "The angles, they keep changing when you're not looking." Alina's headset crackled. Base camp to Marlowe. Their coordinator's voice frayed. we were picking up vibrations, like voices, under the ice. Schumann resonances, Iris said, too quickly. Electromagnetic waves from lightning. Nothing more, but her spectrometer told a different story. Patterns in the sphere S emissions, matching the structure S walls, matching the vibrations, matching the strange radio bursts NASA had detected from a neutron star last year. A message decoded, a language. That night, the auroras turned black. They didn't sleep. Couldn't he? The sphere began emitting a low-frequency hum that bypassed the ears and vibrated directly in the skull. Raj started charting correlations between the tones and their vital signs on the medical monitors. It's mirroring us, he whispered, pupils dilated. Heartbeats, synaptic pulses, but there's a lag, like it's learning. By morning, the first cracks appeared, not in the ice in them. Micah developed a tic, his left eye fluttering independently of the right. Iris compulsively recited prime numbers in Sumerian. Alina found blood in her urine, dark and thick as oil. The base camp S final transmission came through at 3:17. Something S out here, moving under the surface. The seal's god. The seals are screaming the feed dissolved into wet static. They should have left then. Should have burned every research note, collapsed the tunnel, fled south. Instead, they descended. The chamber had grown warmer. The air cloying with a scent Alina. Couldn't he place burnt honey, maybe, or rotting orchids? The sphere now floated unsupported, its surface resolving into shapes. A double helix, a spiral galaxy, a human fetus curled around its own tail. It's a beacon, Iris said, her voice hollow. She stopped blinking hours ago. Not a message, a summons. We were the first ones here in millions of years. We woke it up. Raj laughed a wet, choking sound. His nose hadn't stopped bleeding since breakfast. Dawn TUC. This is the message. The only message that matters. Life evolves, grows complex, reaches a point where it can detect the truth. And then the truth comes to reset the experiment. Micah screamed when the walls moved. Not the structure itself, but the shadows they cast. Tendrils of darkness peeled away from the corners, squirming with impossible joints. Alina's flashlight beam passed through them like smoke. They tasted the air, tested. One brushed Raj's cheek, and where it touched, his skin bubbled like wax, rearranging itself into something segmented and chitinous. He didn't seem to notice. The universe is so very old, he whispered, pressing his ruined face against the sphere. We were not the first. We were not even the 1000th. They rise, they reach out, and then the sphere opened, not along a seam, not in any dimension Alina could comprehend. One moment it was a sphere, the next an absence, a hole punched through reality. The light around it bent like taffy. The air tasted of lithium and regret. From the void came a sound, a single note, impossibly deep, vibrating through bone and bedrock and bloodstream. Iris began to unravel. Literally, strands of her hair levitated, each follicle elongating into filaments that split and split again, branching into fractal patterns. Her skin sagged, her mouth stretching into a rictus grin as her jaw unhinged. "It is so simple," she gurgled, her voice layered with harmonics no human throat could produce. "We re not the inhabitants, we re the infection, and the universe has an immune system." Micah shot her. The Gun S report echoed through the chamber. Iris S' body collapsed. But the thing that came pouring out of her, a tangle of iridescent worms, each segment etched with tiny hieroglyphs, kept speaking, self-replicating chemical reactions. That is all you are. Temporary eddies in the entropic flow. But the great filter, the filter, is patient, Raj was chanting now. His mutated throat producing clicks and whistles that matched the sphere S frequencies. The shadow tendrils caressed him, merging with his flesh. Alina S' legs gave out as she felt it in her own body, a wrongness in her marrow, her cells shivering like plucked strings. The void pulsed, expanded, and she understood, not in words, not in images, a raw data dump into her primate brain, searing neural pathways that had evolved to track predators on savannas, not comprehend cosmic truths. She saw them, then the things that lived between galaxy clusters, older than stars, vaster than hope. They weren't malevolent. They weren't anything. Life was a brief fever dream on a speck of cosmic dust. And they were the white blood cells. The sphere wasn't a warning. It was a timer. Micah S' gun clicked empty. He was crying. His left eye now a cluster of crystalline shards. "Make it stop," he begged, clawing at his ears. "It s in my head. It s singing in my head." The void exhaled. Pressure shifted. Reality puckered. Alina S' eardrums burst as the air itself vibrated, harmonizing with the sphere S frequency. Micah came apart, first his body desiccating, crumbling into a fine powder that swirled into the void. Raj followed, his mutated form collapsing inward like a deflated lung. The worm thing that had been Iris dissolved into a viscous puddle, its final words echoing in the steam. "Cleanse," and reset cleanse, and Alina crawled. Her fingers left bloody smears on the floor. The void loomed, singing its gravitational dirge. She realized distantly, that her teeth were vibrating loose from their sockets. But the researcher in her, the stubborn, brilliant fool, who memorized every Bayard and Shackleton biography, as a girl fumbled for her field recorder, the red light blinked. Still running. Humanity, she rasped, her throat full of broken glass. We always wondered, are we alone? A laugh bubbled up, hot and hysterical. Blood dripped from her lips. Weary not. O God, weary not. And they've been pruning us, over and over, like weeds, like mold. The sphere-S song reached a crescendo. The chamber walls rippled, shedding layers of reality, like old skin. A leaner S left hand dissolved into static, pixels scattering into the void. The beacon, she pressed the recorder to her disintegrating face. It S not for them. It S for the next ones. The next experiment. Tell them Don T look down. Don T look up. Don T ever the void inhaled. When the rescue team found the site 2 weeks later, they discovered 3 anomalies. A perfectly circular shaft through 3 kilometers of ice. Its walls fused to glass a field recorder, preserved in a pool of frozen blood, and Dr. Eleanor Marlowe's journal, filled with increasingly deranged sketches of spiral patterns, and a single phrase, repeated in 14 dead languages. We were never meant to know. The recorder's final entry, played at the UN hearing, lasted 9 seconds. 9 seconds of screams, wet crunching noises, and a voice that was almost a leaner S, but stretched, multiplied, layered with something vast and cold and ancient whispering. Coming cleanse, reset, they nuked the site, dropped every thermobaric warhead in the arsenal, sealed the continent. It didn't matter. Deep in the Mariana Trench, hydrothermal vents began emitting the same frequency. In the Sahara, a new sinkhole hummed with telltale vibrations, and on the dark side of the moon, a crater started glowing softly, greenly, patiently. The universe had all the time in the world. Story 7. The cicadas fell silent as Clara turned onto Black Hollow Road. She rolled down the window of her rust-eaten Civic, expecting the familiar chorus of peepers from Miller S. Pond. Instead, the air hung thick with the smell of wet soil and rotting apples, the way it always did before a storm. Her hands tightened on the steering wheel when the first raindrops hit the windshield fat, warm and slow. Like oil from a crankcase, the house waited as she knew it would. Sagging porch, shutters bleeding rust down weathered clapboards. 12 years since she stood on that cracked concrete step. 12 years since the police dragged the pond looking for Lucy. Her fingers found the scar on her collarbone, a childhood souvenir from the oak tree out back, the skin still puckered where the branch had snapped under her weight, where Lucy S. laughter had curdled into screams. Should we burned it down, said a voice behind her. Clara spun. Heart jackrabbiting, Ethan Cooper leaned against his pickup, thumbs hooked in overall straps, stained with motor oil. His face had hardened into angles she didn't recognize. But the scar bisecting his left eyebrow hadn't changed. Her scar from the rock she'd thrown during their third-grade feud. Still jumpy, I see. His smile didn't reach eyes the color of tarnished pennies. Heard about your mama passing. Cancer as a bitch. The rain picked up, pattering against dead oak leaves in the drainage ditch. Clara noticed how Ethan's gaze kept flicking to the tree line behind the house, how his boots shifted weight from left to right, like a spooked horse. Appreciate the condolences. She hoisted her suitcase from the trunk. The handle left red grooves in her palm. I'll be gone by week's end. Just need to sort her things. Ethan's jaw worked. There's a Motel 6 off the interstate. I am fine here. You shouldn't he bit off the words, nostrils flaring. For a heartbeat, Clara saw the boy who taught her to skip stones across Miller's Pond. Then his face shut like a cellar door. Watch where you step. Floorboards rot different than you remember. The screen door screamed its familiar protest. Inside, the air tasted of mothballs and menthol cigarettes. Mama's lazy boy sat indentured in carpet, worn gray by decades of restless pacing. Clara trailed fingers over the fireplace mantle dust, cold ashes. A framed photo of Lucy grinning, with her front teeth missing. The glass had cracked diagonally across her sister's face. She slept fitfully that night. The old house creaked and sighed, floorboards groaning under unseen weight. At 3:17 a.m. by the glowing alarm clock, Clara woke to the smell of wet earth. Her sheets were caked with mud. Sleepwalking again, she thought, scrubbing her nails raw in the shower. The therapist's voice floated up through the drain gurgle. Stress-induced parasomnia, common in trauma survivors. But the mud between her toes felt real enough. Gritty, cold, smelling of river silt. And something metallic beneath the first journal entry appeared on day 3. Clara found it tucked inside her suitcase. Pages warped as if left in the rain. Mama's spidery handwriting clawed across lined paper. October 12th. It's coming closer. I see its shadow through the curtains tall. Too tall, with antlers like broken fence posts. The dogs want tea, stop howling. Called Earl to board up the cellar, but he just crossed himself and drove off. God forgive me. I should be burned this place when I had the chance. Clarma's hands shook. She hadn't packed any journals. Hadn't even opened Mama's desk yet. Through the kitchen window, the oak tree's branches scraped against the roof in the rising wind. Something glinted among its roots. The shovel bit into soft earth with a wet thunk. Clara's blisters burst as she levered up another clump of soil. Rain soaked through her sweatshirt, plastering hair to her neck. The storm had blown in fast purple-black clouds, swallowing the horizon. Thunder growling like an empty stomach there. Pale wood splintered by roots. A child's sneaker. Neon pink fabric eaten by mold. Clara's vision tunneled. She knew that shoe. Had watched Lucy tie the laces that final morning. Double knots, because single S for babies. Clara. Lightning flashed. The tree's shadow stretched across the yard long, twisted, ending not at the fence line, but at Clara's feet. She looked up slowly. It stood between two pines at the wood's edge, 7 feet tall, maybe 8. A stag's skull gleamed bone-white where a face should be. Antlers crusted with lichen and old blood. Its body shimmered like heat haze over asphalt. All matted fur and too many joints. Clara's breath hitched. The thing cocked its head. Vertebrae popping like firecrackers, she ran. The screen door slammed behind her. Lock clicking home. Through rain-streaked windows, she watched it pace the tree line. Lightning flickered, and for a heartbeat, its shadow fell toward the house, long fingers, brushing the porch steps. Ethan's truck fishtailed into the driveway at dawn. He found Clara huddled in the bathtub, clutching Lucy's sneaker like a rosary. "You saw it," he said, not a question. His flannel shirt reeked of bourbon and sweat. "What is it?" Her voice sounded small, broken. The watcher, old as the hollow, feeds on guilt. Ethan's laugh came out jagged. "Your mama used to leave offerings, rabbits, possums. After Lucy," he trailed off, staring at the mold-crusted shoe. "It has been quiet these past years. Hungry, I reckon." Clara's dream that night was not a dream. Cold air pried her eyelids open. She stood in the woods, barefoot, wearing the nightgown Mama had washed weekly, until the hospice bed replaced the laundry machine. Moonlight filtered through pines, casting latticework shadows over the forest floor. The air hummed with cicadas, not their usual drone, but a shrill, panicked frequency that made her molars ache. Footsteps crunched behind her. Not Ethan's work boots. Not human. Crack-pop-crack of joints bending wrong. Clara's legs moved without consent, carrying her deeper into the trees. The smell of wet earth intensified, undercut by something sweet and putrid roadkill, left to bloat in August. Heat the cabin materialized from shadow. Rotting timbers slumped under moss. Roof shingles curled like dead leaves. Mama S. journal lay nailed to the door with railroad spikes. Pages fluttering in a wind Clara couldn't he feel. Inside, something scratched metal on stone her hand, pushed the door open. Moonlight bled through cracks in the walls, illuminating a dirt floor scattered with bones. Small bones, rodent, bird, some with charred ends. At the room S center stood a stone altar, its surface stained black. Above it, suspended from the rafters on fishhooks and baling wire, hung Lucy-No, not Lucy, the thing wearing Lucy's face, its limbs twisted like birch saplings in a tornado, joints bulbous and inverted, milky eyes rolled toward Clara, lips splitting into a grin too wide for a child's skull. You let go. It rasped in Lucy's voice, the voice from the pond, from the nightmares. You wanted to fly, so you let go. Clara's scream lodged in her throat, the creature's fingers, 12, 15. She couldn't count, brushed her cheek. Cold seeped into her marrow. So light it crooned. Antlers scraped the ceiling as it leaned closer. So hollow. What delicious guilt, UV groan. She woke screaming. Ethan shook her, face bloodless. We need to leave. Now. But the roads had flooded. Sheriff Nelson's voice crackled through the radio. Historic rainfall. All routes into Black Hollow impassable until the power died at nightfall. Clara sits now in Mama's chair, watching shadows writhe on the walls. The journal lies open in her lap. Final entry, dated the day before Mama's diagnosis. It's here, in the walls, in the pipes. I hear it drinking from the toilet reservoir, licking condensation off the windows. Last night, it wore Earl's face, asked for sweet tea in that syrupy drawl he uses at church. I told it to go to hell. It laughed with Lucy's voice. The scratching starts at midnight, not from the doors or windows, but inside the walls, long, deliberate scrapes that set Clara's teeth on edge. She reaches for the oil lamp, its flame gutters, casting monstrous shapes on the peeling, wallpaper something thuds in the cellar. Clara's hand hesitates on the basement door. The therapist's voice whispers trauma response. Survivor's guilt. But another voice younger, sharper hisses, look what you did. The stairs groan. Dank air wraps around her throat. By lamplight, the concrete walls shimmer with condensation. Something glints in the far corner. A video camera. The tape inside bears a label in Mama's handwriting. L.S. 9th birthday. Clara's breath fogs the viewfinder. As she presses play home, video static resolves into sunshine. Lucy spins in the backyard. Pink sneakers kicking up dandelion fluff. Mama's voice off camera. Make a wish baby. The camera swings toward the oak tree. Young Clara perches on the high branch, face pinched with concentration. She inches forward, sneaker scraping bark. Jump. Lucy shrieks. ILL catch you. The branch snaps. But in the video, it doesn't break clean. Clara watches her child self grab Lucy's wrist. As she falls a desperate, instinctive clutch, sees Lucy's smile vanish as she yanked off balance, hears the crack of her sister's skull. Hitting, the exposed ruthless screen goes dark. Upstairs, the front door creaks open. Clara doesn't turn when the footsteps reach the basement stairs. She already knows what she see the antlers scraping ceiling plaster. The shadow stretching 10 feet tall. The watcher's breath smells of turned earth and childhood nightmares. There you are. It whispers with Mama's voice. Outside, the rain stops. They find the house empty 3 days later when the floodwaters recede. Sheriff Nelson chalks it up to city folks spooking easy. Ethan packs his toolbox, leaves a jug of gasoline by the porch. Neither notices the fresh dirt under the oak tree or the small handprint in the mud beside it. In the Motel 6, off Interstate 44, a maid discovers a journal left open on the bed. The final entry, written in unfamiliar script, reads, "It's easier when you stop fighting." The guilt tastes sweeter that way. Down the hall, a child laughs. The ice machine hums. Somewhere far away, antlers scrape against stars. Story 8. The keepers of Drowning Rock. The first thing Clara noticed was the smell of rust. It clung to the walls of the lighthouse like a living thing, metallic and faintly sweet, as if the iron skeleton beneath the limestone had begun to bleed. She set her duffel bag down on the warped floorboards. The sound echoing up the spiral staircase to the lantern room 30 meters above. The Maritime Commission's letter crinkled in her back pocket. As she moved, temporary keeper needed at Drowning Rock Light. Housing and stipend provided. Immediate occupancy. 3 weeks. That's what she told herself when she took the gig. 3 weeks of solitude to outrun the hollow-eyed face of her mother in the hospice bed. The beep of machines replaced by the groan of tides. The commission agent had warned her the old Fresnel lens needed manual winding every 4 hours. He hadn't mentioned how the salt-caked windows warped the sunset into something jaundiced, or how the radio in the watchroom only picked up the warped remnants of a gospel station from the mainland. Sermons dissolving into static hiss. Day 1. Clara found the first journal entry tucked behind the pantry's canned peaches. The paper felt wrong thick and vaguely greasy. like parchment made from drowned skin. June 14th, tides running backwards tonight. Saw faces in the capillary waves. The light 1T catch proper. It slicks off the water like oil. She tossed the page into the cast iron stove. The fire turned the ink a queasy green before swallowing it whole. Day 3. The storm hit at high tide. Clara wound the lens mechanism until her palms blistered. Watching through the diamond pane windows as waves clawed at the cliffs below. That is, when she heard the first knock 3 precise raps against the tower door. Impossibly loud over the gale. The security monitor showed nothing but rain-lashed stone steps ending in void. Hello. Her voice skittered up the staircase. The radio crackled to life behind her, broadcasting a single phrase in a child S voice. Don T let the deadlights go out. When she turned back to the screen, something pale and jointless pressed against the camera lens from the outside. Day 5. Low tide revealed the cave. Clara spotted it while checking the storm S damage, a jagged mouth in the cliff base. Vomitous green water retreating from its throat. Her flashlight beam caught wet shapes on the walls as she ventured inside. Not barnacles. Handprints. Dozens of them. Small enough to belong to a child. Pressed deep into stone, as if the rock had momentarily turned to clay. The air tasted of iodine and spoiled meat. That night, the generator failed. Clara spent 6 hours in the pitch-black service room. Fingers slipping on cold gears as the temperature dropped breath cloud cold. Something chuckled wetly in the dark corner where the spare fuel cans sat. When the lights finally sputtered back on, she found her toolbox arranged into a perfect spiral on the floor. Each wrench and screwdriver pointing toward the center, where her Mother S hospice bracelet lay coiled like a snake. Day 7. The tide stopped. Clara stood at the observation deck, binoculars trembling in her hands. The sea surrounding Drowning Rock hung perfectly still. A sheet of green glass stretching to the horizon. No gulls. No wind. The silence pressed against her eardrums until she heard phantom whispers, not in English, but in the guttural clicks and glottal stops of something that had never learned human speech. She checked the cameras obsessively now. The thermal lens showed heat signatures, where nothing stood a smudge of yellow-red, hovering at the tower S base. Another drifting through the supply room. The security system logged 347 door-open alerts between 2:13 and 2:14 a.m. Every exterior portal cycling, open/, closed/open/, closed in perfect synchronization. The journal entries kept appearing under her pillow, taped to the foghorn controls, written in what she prayed was squid ink. July 1st, they read teaching me the true shape of the light. It is not a beam. It is a hook. Day 9. Clara stopped sleeping. The lighthouse had begun to breathe. She depressed her palm against the curved wall during night watch and feel a slow, rhythmic expansion. Like the tower was the rib cage of some colossal beast. The smell of rust grew thicker. She found red droplets beating on the stairs each morning, leading down to the cave. Her reflection in the lantern room glass developed a lag. Blink and the other Clara would stay wide-eyed for half a second too long. Smile a second too late. Day 11. The radio started transmitting. Clara was halfway up the service ladder when the static broke. A wet, vibrating voice oozed from the speakers. Not the child this time, but something that mimicked her own vocal patterns, like a twisted recording. Clara, you've been neglecting the deadlights. She froze. The lens above her began to spin without being cranked. Its prismatic glass warping into shapes that hurt to perceive too many angles, impossible refractions. The beam that sliced through the stagnant air wasn't tea white anymore. It glowed a diseased yellow, illuminating things in the water that she refused to name. That is when the real knocking started. Not on the door, inside the walls. Day 13. The cave flooded, not with water, but with thick, coagulating darkness that crept up the cliff path during the false dawn. Clara watched through the tower's basement window as the shadows pooled around the lighthouse, forming tendrils that tested the foundation stones. The journal entry she found that afternoon was written in her own handwriting. They've always been here. The first keepers. Didn't he build the lighthouse to warn ships? They built it to keep the light from getting out. Day 14. Clara's skin began sloughing off in papery sheets, revealing patches of something iridescent and scaled beneath. The cuts on her palms from the generator incident never scabbed. They wept a viscous black fluid that smelled of low-tide estuaries. She tried hailing the mainland, but the radio only played back her own screams from future moments. The thing in the walls started singing. It used her mother's voice. Day 16. The storm returned with biblical fury. Waves, the color of bruised flesh, battered the tower as Clara scrambled to secure hatches. Salt water geysered through cracks in the observation deck, pooling around her ankles. That is when she saw them, figures standing ankle-deep in the maelstrom, silhouetted by lightning, dozens of them, faces upturned toward the lighthouse, their arms raised in unison, not waving, drowning. The lantern room exploded at midnight. Clara reached it just in time to see the Fresnel lens crack open like an egg. releasing a swarm of black-winged things that screeched in perfect radio static. The light beam twisted, lancing downward into the cave mouth. From the depths came an answering glow, phosphorescent and pulsing. A huge rhythmic light that matched the tower's breathing walls. The journal's final entry burned itself onto the watchroom desk. You are the light, now day 17. The rescue boat found the lighthouse abandoned, its lamp dark. They noted curious damage to the structure's spiral fractures in every window. Staircase warped into a perfect double helix. The keeper's log showed normal entries up until the storm, followed by 14 blank pages. On the 15th page, drawn in what the coroner later swore was human bile, investigators found an intricate diagram of the coastal shelf. It showed drowning rock connected to a vast underwater cavern system by a narrow stone throat. Inside the cave, wedged beneath a barnacle-crusted boulder, they discovered Clara's waterproof flashlight, still functioning after weeks submerged. Its beam illuminated the ceiling where 3 words had been finger-carved into the rock, each letter 6 feet tall. She says, "Come home," epilogue. The new keeper arrives on a windless afternoon. He finds the tower spotless, the lens gleaming. As he unpacks in the watchroom, the radio crackles with a familiar voice female, calm, with a gurgling undertone like water in lungs. Remember to wind the light every 4 hours. They hate the dark. Outside, the tide begins to retreat. Far below, in the lightless deep, something pale and many-jointed stirs at the end of a luminous yellow hook. Story 9. The rain smelled like wet earth and burnt hair. As Clara turned onto the Hollow-s single-paved road, Greer's Hollow, hadn't he changed in the 17 years she avoided it? Same sagging clapboard houses, same rusted pickup trucks squatting on cinder blocks in overgrown yards, but the birch trees lining the road seemed closer now, their bone-white trunks crowding the asphalt like curious spectators. She gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles matched their pallor. Her mother's house waited at the end of Hemlock Lane. Its gabled roof slouched like a tired old woman. The key still hung beneath the cracked garden gnome, its red hat chipped away to reveal gray concrete skull. Inside, the air clung thick with mothballs, and something fouler beneath a sweet-rotten scent that made Clara's tongue curl. She traced a finger through the dust on the hallway console. Fresh grooves cut through the grime. Someone had opened the drawer recently. Hello. Her voice evaporated in the stale air. A grandfather clock in the parlor choked out 3 listless chimes. 3 o'clock. Though the light filtering through grime-caked windows suggested twilight. The attic stairs creaked as she climbed. Her mother's obsession lived there, preserved under drop cloths, dozens of paintings of the same skeletal tree, its branches clawing at a sickly yellow sky. Clara yanked a canvas free. Beneath the tree's roots, barely visible in the gloaming, shadowy figures with elongated limbs, their faces smeared like wet clay. A metallic taste flooded her mouth. She dropped the painting that night. The wind spoke, not in howls or whispers, but in words. Clara lay rigid in her childhood bed as something scraped against the siding below her window. Clarea, 2 syllables drawn out like bow over cello strings. The digital clock flashed 3:03 a.m. when she finally dared peer through the blinds. The moonlit yard lay empty, except for 3 dark mounds beneath the birch tree, fresh graves, rotting pumpkins. She didn't go out to check morning, brought gray light and Mrs. Driscoll from next door, bearing a lemon poppy seed cake that reeked of kerosene. We missed you at the harvest festival, the old woman said, not smiling. Her left eye wandered independently of the right. Your mama always made the crow effigy, fine stitchwork on the wings. Clara found the effigy in the basement, nestled among moldering Christmas decorations, 6 feet of burlap and straw. Its beak, a curved hunting knife sealed with wax. The stitches along its wings did look expert tiny, precise, the black thread glistening like fresh ink when she touched a wingtip. Static snapped between her fingers and the figure. A faint heartbeat pulsed through the burlap. The static followed her. It crackled in her hair when she sorted through her mother's jewelry box, popped between her molars as she drank tepid coffee. By dusk, her fillings ached. She took 2 Xanax and opened all the windows, letting in the scent of coming rain. The grandfather clock chimed 7 times. Through its cracked face, she glimpsed movement, a dark shape flitting across the ceiling behind her. But when she spun around, only dust motes danced in the fading light. At 3:03 a.m. the scratching returned. Clara pressed her ear to the wall. The sound wasn't outside. It was inside the walls. Something dry and brittle scratching its way upward through the house's bones. She fled to the kitchen and found the drawer she noticed earlier wrenched completely out, lying on the floor inside the cavity. A tarnished silver locket she didn't recognize. Its chain snarled like a hangman's noose. The clasp resisted before springing open with a click that echoed too loudly. 2 faces stared from oval frames. Her mother on the left, younger than Clara had ever seen her. On the right, a man with hollow cheeks and eyes like thumb smudges in oil paint. Behind them, the skeletal tree from the paintings, Clara S. reflection, shimmered faintly in the Locket S glass, except her hair was parted on the opposite side. And why was she smiling? The basement door swung open with a groan. Cold air rushed up, carrying the scent of turned soil and burning hair. Clara S. feet moved without consent. Each step down warped under her weight, like living tissue. The effigy stood waiting in the center of the concrete floor, straw poking through burst seams. Its knife beak glinted. You've been chosen. The wind spoke through the foundation vents. She woke on the basement floor at dawn. Fingernails packed with dirt she couldn't account for. The locket still clutched in her hand when she examined it in daylight. Her portrait showed her screaming they came for her at the grocery store. Mr. Haskins from the feed shop blocking the cereal aisle. Mrs. Driscoll humming off-key by the frozen meats. Should V stayed gone, the cashier said as she rang up Clara S. single bottle of wine. His name tag read Elias in shaky cursive. The watcher donned tea like unfinished business. That night, Clara poured the wine down the sink and searched her mother S. desk. Bills, shopping lists. A faded photo of Clara at age 7, standing beside the birch tree, except she never allowed her mother to take that picture. The child in the photo gripped a knife in her left hand. Clara was right-handed. The scratching inside the walls grew louder. She followed the sound to the upstairs bathroom, where something rattled behind the medicine cabinet. The mirror shattered when she yanked the cabinet open. Glass teeth raining into the sink. Behind the Advil and denture cream crouched a nest of fingernail clippings and matted black hair. Buried in the nest, a baby tooth. Her baby tooth, kept in a tiny velvet box after she lost it at age 6. Except this tooth was stained brown at the root, and when she lifted it, the nest began to smoke. Clara ran down the stairs, out the door, into the moonlit yard. The 3 mounds beneath the birch tree had unfurled into fleshy blooms, enormous morels, glistening with mucus. They pulsed in unison. From the woods came a sound like rotten fruit hitting pavement. Over and over, something moved between the trees, its silhouette warping like heat haze. Tall, too tall, arms that hinged in too many places. The locket burned against her chest. She tore it off, hurled it into the dark. Her scream echoed back from 3 directions at once. When she turned to flee inside, the house was gone. Only the skeletal tree remained, its branches now heavy with silver lockets that chimmeled in the non-existent wind. The watcher stepped from behind the trunk. It wore Elias S. face, but stretched lips peeled back from gleaming dentures, pupils swallowing the eyes whole. You've been feeding it your whole life, it said in Elias S. nicotine-ruined voice. Every nightmare, every scream, every time you chose fear over joy, its neck elongated as it leaned down, cheek brushing hers. Mama made sure you DB tenderized proper. Clara S. legs gave out. The ground felt spongy, warm. What do you want? Want. The Watcher S. laugh smelled of spoiled milk. I am just the butcher. The hunger belongs to. It gestured upward. The lockets in the tree began to open. Clara S. face stared from each one, different ages, different expressions, all screaming. The tree S. roots squirmed free from the soil, revealing cavities where the figures from her mother S. paintings now stirred, their clay faces dripping. Harvest time, the Watcher sighed, pulling a curved blade from its ribcage. Clara S. final thought as the knife descended. I never parted my hair on the left. In the morning, Mrs. Driscoll baked a new cake. Down the road, the for sale sign outside Clara S. house flapped in the breeze. A crow perched on the garden gnome S. head. Something shiny clutched in its beak. If anyone had been there to listen, they might be heard faint screaming from the storm drain. If anyone had checked the basement, they'd have found fresh dirt piled beneath the effigy. And if they'd examined the locket the crow dropped into its nest, they'd have seen 2 new portraits added to the collection. A wide-eyed woman beside a blurred figure, both mouths open in perfect unison.